Joining us now to discuss the strikes on Syrian targets is retired Army Colonel Gerald Faunt. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So these strikes were reportedly in retaliation for recent rocket and drone attacks on U.S. forces. Can you tell us a little bit about those attacks?
Certainly. Those attacks have been executed by surrogates of Iran in the area, obviously Syrian-backed and Syrian-supplied forces. So we have an inherent right to self-defense. So if there is an immediate or imminent threat against our forces, we should be striking back. I think this is strategic messaging also to Iran to say, with what is also going on in theater with Israel, is we are starting to get to some red lines possibly, where we are no longer going to tolerate these activities in the theater, and it's strategic messaging to them.
Sure.
And with this, is there not a chance this escalates tensions with Syria and Iranian-backed militia groups?
Well, we've been at this in theater security cooperation and engagement against ISIS since the previous administration. This is an ongoing campaign against them.
ISIS this is, groups, or
these are ISIS groups, sure. And then there's Syrian-backed. You know, there's different factions. There's the ISIS, and then there's the Syrian government-backed forces also. So these are all surrogates of Iran, and it's time to start laying down some cards on the table.
And the Pentagon says another goal of this is to deter any expansion, any widening of the conflict. Is that really just sending that message to Iran?
That is that strategic message, along with also the other assets that you're seeing go into theater. Two carrier strike groups. We know we've had the Ford in the Eastern Mediterranean. Now the Eisenhower is going into the Persian Gulf. That's the backyard of Iran. And now if you look at the array of the various guided missile cruisers and destroyers in the area, they've really put up a good air missile defense umbrella around the area to be able to address drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles. And again, we're putting in Patriot PAC-3 missiles and the Terminal High Altitude Air Defense System, which is specifically for short and intermediate range ballistic missiles out of Iran.
And can you expound on that messaging just a bit? Is there a secondary purpose behind these attacks?
Behind the attack, it is straight up. It is they're starting to get to some red lines. The patience and tolerance for what they've been doing. Realize we've had a series of attacks against our forces, and this is all in the background. Whether you talk about various groups, etc., the basis and the root cause of it is Iran.
Ever since the attack on Israel by Hamas on October 7th, we've been hearing that Iran probably had its hands in it, probably helped plan it. But for a while, we were saying there wasn't evidence yet, even though everyone was expecting that. Is there any evidence now that they were involved with Hamas?
I believe that there's probably enough evidence in our intelligence agencies that we are not revealing necessarily because of the means. I mean, when you saw that Israel actually shared the voice intercept of the Hamas leaders discussing the misfire rocket on the hospital in Gaza, I mean, that you're exposing a method.
Yeah.
So
now they know to be more careful on
correct,
the phone.
Correct. So so making sure that you protect sources and methods is very important to maintain your ability to gather intelligence.
Sure. Makes sense.
And switching to Israel, they are escalating their ground attacks in Gaza, but not fully invading. When will that come? Or will that come?
Great question. I think this is still going to be a conditions-based operation, and for each one of the phases. I believe in the next few hours, a couple days, that we'll understand a little bit more just how large of an incursion this is. But again, this is setting the conditions. Could be more reconnaissance and force. If you notice too, they have taken out a lot of Hamas leadership. And when you're a terrorist organization, you operate in cells. What glues you together are those leaders. You start taking out those leaders, and those cells aren't glued together because they're isolated, because you don't want one cell knowing what everybody else is doing, because as you capture a cell, then you give up the whole scheme, the whole plan. So that's how terrorist organizations work. So you start taking out that leadership, you start breaking down their ability to coordinate. That's critical. So they're kind of deconstructing the Hamas leadership, and I believe that they're still going after certain nodes of command and control, communication, and sustainment nodes that are in the tunnels.
There has been some reporting that even within the Israeli government that there's been some back and forth and some concerns about whether the goal of a full-scale invasion is truly achievable. Is that why we're seeing the delay, just all of the back and forth?
Yeah, it's hard to speculate, but I believe, again, General Petraeus has voiced this in some social media that I'm a part of, is that what we're really hoping too is that at the end of this, where is the phase 4 and phase 5 of any campaign? Phase 4 is stabilize. Phase 5 is transition to civil authority. The Israelis gave up control, administration of Gaza in 2005. They're going to go in there. If you go in there with the military, you break it, you own it for that period. But what is the transition plan to get this back to some civil authority, which obviously is not going to be Hamas? Remember, originally it was the Palestinian Authority that they turned over Gaza in 2005. Hamas kind of really seized power away from the Palestinian Authority and really became the governance of Gaza.
So they don't want to be stuck there for
well, the whole idea is to get Hamas out of there. So
Yeah.
who's next? And then, yeah, you don't want to be mired in trying to administer Gaza.
All right. Retired Army Colonel Gerald Faunt, as always, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.